Welcome to Rockstar Doctor Life. I'm Melissa Longo, and each episode, my guests and I will bring you fresh, fun ways to rock your life as a health professional and create a business that aligns with who you are and the life you want to live. Hey everyone, this week on Rockstar Doctor Life, I have another special compilation episode. This show started off as a series of recordings from previous guests where I asked them, what is your best tip for new graduates? And when I went back recently and listened to some of the answers, I realized, you know what? These aren't tips just for new grads. They're actually tips for all of us, because I don't know about you, but after almost 18 years in practice, I'm always learning, and there are some things now that are timeless. And when I listened to the responses that my previous guests had, there was definitely some consistencies, but there was such a variety in personalities and a variety of ideas that I think it's pertinent for all of us to listen to them in today. So whether you feel like you need a change, you want to shake things up a bit, or you are just starting off in practice, take a listen through to the end, and you're going to hear some great tips to get you fired up and back on track if you're feeling a little bit stuck. But here's the thing, listeners, I want to hear from you. You know that we all have our own stories. We all have our own gifts and our own brilliance. And I wish I could have each and every doc on the planet on the show, but I don't have enough time. I don't have enough episodes. So what I would love for you to do is hit me back with an email or a message on Facebook, or even better, send me a quick audio recording of what is your best tip. What is something that you wished you knew now about practice that you wish you knew when you started? We all have these little gems of wisdom, and what I'd love to feature in the upcoming episodes are more of these tips from people just like you who are doing it day to day and have great ideas to share. So I want to hear what you have to share with us. So send me a message and we'll feature it in one of the upcoming episodes. When I thought back to what I wished I knew when I started practice, it really came down to 5 things. The first was, I wish I could remember then that it was, life is long and practice is long. And I always go back to Stephanie Mage, who said on the show, practice is a marathon, not a sprint. I was so fired up when I came out of chiropractic college, and I wanted to just change the world and the healthcare, but I was also a mom. And so my own journey in trying to figure out how to do that was a little bit different. And I wouldn't trade any of it for anything. And I wish I knew back then that all the things I had in my heart to do didn't have to happen in my first couple years of practice. In fact, some of them are happening now, 18 years later. So I wish I knew that it's a long life. I don't need to do everything right away. And if you're feeling like this right now, maybe you have young kids, maybe your kids are going through something, a growth spurt, maybe they're growth spurt meaning out of the house, maybe you're at the other end of the parenting spectrum, maybe you're feeling like you just want to learn a new technique, or you have some teaching you want to do, you want to speak, you want to travel, awesome. You don't have to do them all at the very same time. And our lives give us different opportunities if you stay open to them. So that was the first thing that I wish I knew before I started practice. The second thing was how important continued learning is. I believe we should stay students for our whole life, for a whole career. And I don't know about you, but I've also observed a direct correlation when I stay engaged and I'm learning new things, whether it's pulling out a book, or it's participating in a discussion in a group, or it's maybe looking at some x-ray cases, or it's listening to a podcast, or reading something about health and healing that's not even related to chiropractic with the work that I do. The more that I learn these things, there is a direct correlation with how engaged and excited I am. And then guess what happens? There's a direct correlation with people who start coming into my practice. So one of the great tips that I always give docs, if you want to grow your practice, keep yourself engaged, keep your mind certain of what you're doing, and keep learning and growing, because then you get excited and you're engaged. And I've noticed several times in my career, the first time being when I did a community television show here in my town, and the second time when I launched my first podcast, when I was giving more and I wasn't getting paid for any of those things. So when I did the television show in my community, I was volunteering my time and creating really great content for people in my community about health and wellness. And because I was engaged and I was doing it, and I was just getting back started in practice with my young kids, I had the time on my side at that point. But because I was engaged in doing it, my practice grew indirectly. That energy that I was giving out was coming back to me in other ways. The same thing happened when I started my first podcast for moms. The energy that I was putting into helping moms feel inspired and connected and not alone, and giving them tips about their health. The more that I did that, then I had the practice growth results from that as well. So where can you be giving, so that you open the doors to receiving more in your life and in your practice? So that's my third tip. Remember that giving energy, we always call it energy marketing. Giving yourself and teaching people is always going to keep you fired up as a doc, but also it's that good karma, right? It's going to bring more energy back to you when you are giving for the sake of just giving. The fourth thing that I wished that I knew was that, you know what, it's okay to not know what you want. It's okay to try different roles, maybe try being an associate, maybe try doing locums. It's okay to not be sure. It's okay to try different paths and realize maybe they're not what you want. I wish I had that experience. I was lucky in that I always knew that I wanted to have my own practice, and I jumped into that right at the beginning. And although I had some other, detours along the way, I always knew that I wanted to run my own practice. But you know what? The more docs that I talk to on the show, and I'm so grateful for the variety of doctors that I get to talk to and the variety of their practice styles, is there isn't one solution for every person. And if you haven't yet downloaded your free guide, the Create Your Own Rockstar Doctor Life booklet, I'm going to suggest that you absolutely do that, because there's 3 exercises that I take doctors through in when I've taught this in different programs and when I've spoken and I've even taught it online. When you go through getting to know yourself, your values, your skills, what kind of life you want, what kind of practice you want, and you start to put that all together, then you can really craft a life that's meaningful to you, rather than doing it the opposite way, where you just jump in and try something and then later realize, it's not really bringing me any joy. It's creating a lot of stress for me, and maybe this isn't even what I thought it was going to be. But you're not going to find any of that out if you don't take some time to sit back and go through that process. You're also not going to find anything out if you just stay stuck in one situation or you never try new situations. And it may be that you're going to have a negative experience to make you realize what you do want in your practice life. Maybe, unfortunately, you're going to have an experience with an associate position that didn't work out really great for you, because it's going to take you to another associate position that's maybe going to be even better. Or maybe it's going to give you some tips about how you really want to operate your procedures or your systems in your own private practice one day. Or maybe it's going to mean that you're going to get an opportunity to go and move somewhere else and do a locum from somewhere or travel. Who knows? I certainly believe that even the most negative experiences show us what our lives are designed to look like in the most unusual way, sometimes not directly. And I always say to my clients, sometimes to really get clear on what you do want, you have to get really clear on what you don't want, whether that's in communications or procedures or working with the team, whatever it is. So I wish that I knew that it is okay to have a variety of experiences. And I would actually tell you, the more experiences, the better. And I would also want to tell my younger self that it's okay to not know what I wanted, to experiment and try to find that out. But if I were to really get clear and think about these things, and I wish I had done this, then I would have saved myself a lot of time and heartache trying to build a model of business that really ultimately wasn't what I wanted or didn't make me happy. Which is really my 5th thing I wish I knew, and what I would tell all new grads today. In fact, I did say this to one of the students that was in my practice recently. Know that there are options. I wish when I was a student and when I was just recently graduating that I knew all the benefits and the pros and cons of different situations, whether it was doing locums or running my own practice or working as an associate or maybe teaching or writing or speaking or doing research. I wish I knew that doing those things could lead to a really happy, productive, prosperous life, because there's lots of doctors that are doing that. There's lots of doctors, and I've had a lot of them on the show, that are using their chiropractic skills, using their love for our philosophy, for the art of chiropractic, the science of chiropractic, in ways that are not designed for clinical practice. And they are all a gift, as far as I'm concerned, they're all a gift to our profession, and everyone has their role. So I wish I knew back then that there are lots of options. And I hope that by listening to the show and connecting with some of the guests, that you have heard some of these great stories and understand that you really do get to create your own rockstar doctor life. You can create a kind of life and a practice that works for you, whether that's a business that works around your kids' schedules, whether it's a business that works in a town that you really love or gives you more time to travel. You really can create your own vision. It just takes a little bit of thought, and it takes some great support. And it takes the idea to start when you, and the willingness to start to make things happen. So I hope that some of the listeners that you've heard, the guests that you've already heard on the show have inspired you to do that. Practice doesn't need to be complicated. It certainly doesn't have to feel like a constant grind and a constant hustle. And I have really learned, the more I have simplified things in my personal life and in my business life, the better things have gotten consistently over the last, certainly after the last 10 years when I rebuilt my life and practice. We do have a new program coming up, the Simple Practice. Doors are opening for that program very, very soon. And you can probably hear it in my voice. I'm really excited about it. I'm combining a lot of the content that I've spoken with my one-on-one clients about, and some of our clients in the inner circle about, and things that I've taught. Because one thing is for sure, and I have had so many conversations on this show, and I've had lots of doctors running $1 million practices, and I've had lots of doctors running small practices, and I've had everyone in the middle of that too. And I am surprised consistently by how many people ask me for tips and tricks and systems and procedures and marketing ideas, communication tools to run the practice that I have. Now, I don't think I have all the answers, but I have certainly created a life and a practice that really brings me a lot of joy and allows me time to be the kind of mom that I want to be and gives me great health and makes an impact in my community. And so we're putting that all together in a fancy package. It's going to be a group training, and you'll hear more about that in the next few weeks for sure. And if this has already piqued your interest, there's a little bit of a teaser, and you want to hear out more about the simple practice, then send me a message. I'd love to send you some information, get you in on the early bird program rate. All right, it's your turn. As I said at the beginning of the show, I want to hear from you, and I want to include some of your listener responses in upcoming episodes. So I would love it if you answer the question, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started practice? What's your best piece of advice? And it could be something that supports a healthy mindset and personal power. It could be a marketing tip. It could be a communication tip. It can be a team building tip. Whatever it is for you, I want to hear from you. So send me a message, send me an audio clip. If you're not sure how to do that, send me a message and I'll help you do it. And I'd love to feature you on one of our upcoming episodes. All right, that's enough for me. I want you to keep listening because you will hear from lots of previous guests on the show and hear some of their best tips for not only new grads, but anyone who's looking to shake things up in practice.
The number one thing would be focus on paying off your debt. And the best way to do that was a lesson I learned from Kevin Fogarty when he told me save 10% of everything that you make. You don't feel $10 on 100, you don't feel 100 on 1,000, and you put it away in a separate account because you never know if and when there's a day that you're going to need that money. So you can start accumulating some wealth by saving 10% of everything you make and focus on creating a plan of paying off your debt.
Invest in yourself. At that early stage, put the money back into your education so you can develop the competence and confidence that you need to be an amazing practitioner and chiropractor.
I would say, as much as it may or may not hurt someone's heart because they have a burning desire to start a practice, I honestly would spend time being an associate. It's invaluable. And you're going to learn what to do or what not to do from someone else. If you are going to start your own practice, then I would say get into mentorship heavily, be observing, really connect with coaching, because you learn the fastest and grow the fastest by basically doing what others do or don't do. And being on your own and a lone wolf is going to keep you stuck for a long time.
So one of the biggest things for a new grad that I want to impart is number one, own chiropractic. Own the practice of it. And if you don't think you own it after graduation, you probably don't, is find people who can teach you. We're talking about technique. We're talking about assessing. We're talking about how to get outcomes. That would be the number one thing. Because I tell you something, you cannot sell what you do not own, and you need to own it.
So looking back in that startup in the practice, I would say the number one thing that I did to grow my practice, but also grow my confidence and certainty and clarity in chiropractic was I did little hour or 30-minute health talks at my office. I had PowerPoints. I got boxed wine, no lie. Don't have to necessarily promote that, but little chocolates and veggie tray, and I really did it up. And I talked about women's health or stress or kids, and I put myself out there as a health and wellness expert, and I always ended it with how chiropractic links to that. And I had signups at the front desk that's like, hey, invite a friend into that. They don't have to be patients. We're just doing this for health and wellness. And every time, and it didn't matter if that class had 2 people in it or 50 people in it. It was that I had to say out loud what I believed. And my roots and conviction got deeper every time. And so as I got more confident, then when I met somebody at the grocery store, I had no problem talking about what I did. Or when I met with a friend and she was pregnant, I had no problem saying, hey, when you have this baby, you better bring it in because this is why. And so again, I think it was as much about getting the message out there as it was cultivating that strength in myself.
The thing I would do sooner than I actually did when I started my practice is to get out into the community and meet people. And I don't necessarily mean patients. I mean the other practitioners in your town, so that you can have a network to be able to refer back and forth to. It might be that you're referring to them more, but in building that trust and building that relationship, it's going to be reciprocated, and it'll come back to you. It took me years to start doing that in my community, and it made a huge difference, and I wish I'd done it a lot sooner.
Yeah, I think if I was a new grad coming out now, just like I was in 2005, I would really make sure that I'm prospecting, right? Like that's different than marketing in a lot of ways. You're going to not have a lot of money, but you are going to have a lot of time, and getting into the community as much as you can is going to be very, very helpful. So what does it entail to get into the community and be effective? I think it comes down to communication skills, right? I talk about the kind of the thriving practice is the three-legged stool, and it's clinical skill, it's marketing, it's business acumen, but that sits on a foundation of really good communication, because all three of those things, whether it's clinical skill, if you can't communicate with your patients, your clinical results will go down. If you can't communicate with your team members and your staff and all your different independent contractors, your business will not do well. And if you can't communicate effectively in your marketing, it'll suffer. So if you struggle a little bit with the communication side of things, or even if you're pretty good, but you can get better, really focus on communication, do public speaking, learn it, get out, meet and have coffee with as many people as you can, really get out there and prospect, grow that expertise in the community. You really want to be known as the expert in your community, and it's going to take you getting out and talking to people about what you do and how it's different. And so that would really be my big, just take home recommendation for the new grad. I think too many new grads think they're going to graduate, get a job making X amount, and everything will be fine, and they'll just keep on making more money doing that. And it's just not the case in this profession. You have to kind of make your own bed in this profession, but it's what makes it really great too, because it's such a good entrepreneur type profession where you can help a lot of people and you can really live the life and business that you want to create.
For me, the number one way is the doctor's report. I think the best thing that people can do is get clear on how to explain the chiropractic principle in a way that makes sense to people, in a way that they can see how it applies to their lives, and in a way that they can see how it applies to their friends' lives. Because when people listen to our report, one of the things they innately want to do is they want to help other people, and they spread the word. And one of the benefits of that ends up being a high number of referrals, not just for our office, but for other offices as well. So getting clear on how to explain the chiropractic principle, do so in some type of a report, and find opportunities to share that. That would be my number one lesson.
Best advice I can give to a new graduate is to make sure you are patient-centered in every aspect of your practice and your new patient process, meaning instead of focusing on the deliberation of what your fee should be, how many visits in a care plan, what your PVA goal is, most of those are ego-based statistics. They're about you. When you focus on, are you delivering patient-centered communication? Are you delivering an experience that patients want to tell others about? Are you delivering recommendations that make sense to people? And are you inspiring them to what their life could look like with your care, rather than just how bad their spine or nervous system is? That is patient-centered, and that will be the best way to grow your practice.
What I would do if I was a new grad to grow my practice, I would start building relationships in the community that your practice is going to be in as soon as possible. Relationships, true relationships with other healthcare professionals, with other businesses. When you can be authentic, be real, be you, that there's nothing more powerful for branding yourself and letting these other companies know that you're there. Nothing more powerful you can do for marketing and attracting business into your practice.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. Find out more about today's guests and everything else that we talked about in the show notes. You can also find all this content and so much more, including videos, blog posts, and how you can work with me on the Rockstar Doctor Life website. If you haven't yet reviewed the show, we'd love it if you headed on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review about what your thoughts are about future episodes for the show and what you like best. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram at Melissa Longo DC and of course on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.